Good afternoon. This is Micah Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates and Crystal Clear Weather. I want to talk to you about our winter weather advisory that goes into effect here shortly, and about the ice potential and what's going on in reality versus what's going on in the models. First, here's a look at the winter weather advisory that the National Weather Service has issued for freezing rain with ice amounts in excess of zero point 0.1 inches north of I-70 and ice amounts of up to a tenth of an inch elsewhere in the advisory, so south of I-70. So that's what the advisory is for. It does go on to say down in additional details that this may not be a typical freezing rain scenario with warm air coming in aloft. Trees and power lines may be ice free, but ice may still accumulate at ground level. So that's the advisory, the winter weather advisory the National Weather Service has issued. So let's take a look at data and what temperatures are currently. Here's a screen capture from the Weather Underground, and this is of Madison County, and so we can see across the county, up in the northern parts of the county, up around Summitville and kind of between Rigdon and Leisure. It's 35, 36 degrees. We've got 36 degrees around just south of Frankton, 36 degrees down around Pendleton. At my house on my weather station, I have 37 degrees, and it's been in the 30s. We had about 30 minutes or so of filtered sunshine earlier, and when that began to happen, the temperature here at my location in North Anderson went from 27 to 35 in about a little over 10 minutes, and we've been in the 30s ever since. And so that is much earlier than what it looked like was going to happen, and it probably would not have happened had we not just had the thinning of the clouds just enough to allow some sunshine in to warm the surface. So that is a big player in how things are playing out. And some of the model data does not see that has happened. Most of the models, the GFS, really most of the models, high resolution even, are showing us being in the upper 20s to lower 30s right now. It's going to be about 4 p.m. by the time I'm finishing this video, and they're just too cool, and they probably would have been right had we not gotten that filtered sunshine, but the fact is we did, and the temperature jumped up about 8 degrees pretty fast, and it has maintained that ever since, because we now have cloud cover, which is an insulator, and it keeps the surface temperature up during the day, and it will keep the surface temperatures down at night in general. So this is what we've got. We've been in the mid 30s for probably 2.5 to 3 hours now. So that's beginning to warm things. I know the street out here in front of my house has been snow covered. It is now melting, and where it's melted and the concrete is exposed but wet, it is not frozen. So that kind of points itself toward working against freezing rain. So I'm going to take a look at the two pieces of model data that are the closest to reality right now. And so this is the NAM 3K. And again, this is its forecast for 4 o'clock. And if we zoom in, we've got anywhere from 35 degrees at Indianapolis to 34 in Muncie. That's actually still too cool. I've seen some weather stations down south of Indianapolis that are actually at 40 and 41 degrees. So warm air really has gotten in here. Again, that bit of filtered sunshine has changed the dynamic quite a bit. But the NAM 3K does, at least have us being in the mid 30s, which is correct. Here's a very similar look from the European. In fact, the European it's not done well with these winter events, but it seems to be the one that has been latched on to this one and may actually get it right. And you can see it actually has 38 down at Indianapolis, 34 at Muncie, at 39 down at Bloomington. So that's a little more in line with what's happening. And again, the Euro never wanted anything to do with freezing rain or with ice accumulation, or technically accretion, as that's technically correct, but at any rate, it wanted nothing to do with ice developing in our area, and it's kind of looking like it may end up being correct. So sticking with the European, here's what the European has across Illinois and Indiana. It has a major ice storm back in Illinois all the way down into Missouri, and they have actually had some really horrible icing conditions anywhere from Oklahoma through parts of Arkansas, Missouri, into southwestern Illinois. They are, in fact, getting hammered out there with a terrible ice storm. We are going to dodge the ice storm bullet. It's just a question of, do we get freezing rain, and if so, how much? Again, the European wants to keep any ice development to our northwest and west, more up around northwest of Marion to Kokomo to Lafayette, kind of those areas out around Crawfordsville, but largely leaves Hamilton, Madison, Delaware counties, Henry counties largely untouched, and that may actually end up being the case. The other one that we'll take a look at is backtracking to the NAM 3K. There's a chance that the temperatures might actually drop back below freezing briefly just after midnight and stay there for 3 or 4 hours. So that may actually be our window where we could have some ice development. And if that occurs, the ice could develop really on any surface, including trees and power lines, if the temperature goes back below freezing. So that'll be something to watch. But even then, the NAM 3K really, has anywhere from just a glaze to maybe 1/10 of an inch of ice, and that's looking, if we do get ice to develop, this is looking pretty realistic. So we're looking at the European as being a no ice scenario, and the NAM 3K as, if we do get ice, this is probably how it's going to play out, where we just get a glaze to maybe 1/10 of an inch here in Madison, Hamilton, Delaware counties, maybe a little more back around Tipton County and up around Kokomo. So those are the two models that are the closest to reality, and the two different scenarios that they lay out. I will take a quick look at the 18Z HRRR because it's kind of starting to come into reality. The HRRR for the last 3 or 4 runs have been putting down a 1/2 inch of ice here, but it also was keeping the temperatures in the 20s, and I kind of showed that to you yesterday, and it actually got a little more aggressive and a little farther south. Here is its idea at 4 p.m. And again, it's got Indianapolis around 39 degrees, but up here in Madison and Delaware counties, it's got us in the lower 30s, maybe just above freezing, with some areas, these blue patches, still below freezing. And to my knowledge, and to any weather station I can see, the entirety of both of these counties are in the mid to maybe upper 30s. So this is still too cold. And but it's a little more realistic compared to what it did have. And as you can see, it also now sees a warm nose, but it's got the warm nose kind of a little farther to the west. With it still would put down decent ice in Madison and Henry and Delaware counties, with very little out in Hamilton and Tipton counties. And I don't think this is how it's going to play out. But I will show you this. I'm not going to show you anything else that shows a significant ice storm here, because I don't think it's going to happen. At this point, I'm kind of doubtful of us even having ice, develop here. Again, we're going to have the temperature drop below freezing now. We've been in the 30s for so long that we're just going to the air is going to have to drop back below freezing in order to develop ice here. So that's kind of what we're looking at. I think worst case scenario for Madison County and even the buffering counties is probably going to be anywhere from a glaze of ice to maybe 1/10 of an inch, and it will largely be when most of us are going to be at home or in bed. But there are people that do have to travel in that midnight to maybe 4 a.m. time frame. So if you do have to be out in those times, keep in mind that even just a glaze of ice makes things extremely treacherous. And then you've got a glaze of ice and it's raining on it, and makes it wet ice, and that makes it even more slippery. So please use caution. If you come out and you see there's any ice on your vehicle, there's a good chance it's going to be on the roads too. So just use that as your barometer if you do go out and travel. So this is Michael Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates. Have a great and safe evening and overnight hours.